Let's go. Let's do this. Okay, everything's set up. Everything's working, hopefully. Okay. Hey lads, welcome everyone to the 2-year anniversary livestream. It's been 2 years since this channel was created and basically the first video was uploaded. Let's see if everything works. It works. Okay, nice. Nice, it's done. Works perfectly. Okay. Hello Brittany Flanders, Goroko Uzumaki Jr., Lucy Dreamer. Hello. How are you all doing? I got 2 years. It's been quite a while, I gotta say. Hi, KW Gamer Cute. Hello, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. God, it's been a while since I've streamed actually. It's been quite a while. Okay. Let's check. Yep, everything's working. Nice. live. That's a lot of live streams. So anyway, how are y'all doing today? I'm doing fine. Okay, that's nice to know. Jacksepticeye upload. Mario did drugs and ruined my. Well, that's sad. So basically, I think 2 years ago, basically, I've uploaded my first video on Pokemon Revolution Online. It's been a while. It's been actually quite a while. I gotta say. Yeah, 2 years ago. You see? See, the thing is, that's the thing. There it is. Gotcha plushie. Hello, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Welcome. 2 years ago. That's the thing. This is the very first video. My god. That's insane to think. 21st of April 2017. Oh my god. It's been a while. Yep. It's been quite a time. And I gotta say, it's not bad. It's not bad. It was kind of fun. It was pretty good. It was pretty good time, I gotta say. I remember I was doing just the small videos about this Pokemon game. It was so fun, man. It was funny as well. Let's see if anybody's here. Hi. Is the chat working? Is there anybody? Hi, hello, Vivi Tarnini. Okay, you're here. How are you, Vivi Tarnini? Tarnini, yep. How was your day? My god. 2 years. 2 years anniversary. So nice. If you have any suggestions on what to react, lads, or if you wanna ask me questions, let's go. Let's talk. What go on your 2 year on YouTube? The reason why I went doing YouTube is just 2 years. I mean, I've been doing YouTube for 2 years and it's been it's been quite an adventure actually. Yeah. So I mean, if you have any suggestions on what to react or anything, like talk to me, just go for it. Let's talk about it. I personally think that doing reactions is one of the easiest thing to do on YouTube, in my opinion. So I don't know. I'm grand, going to park soon. Oh, that's cool. I'm fine. I'm doing a live stream right now, so you can see. Hi. It's been an adventure. It's been quite an adventure. A lot of videos. How many videos in total will we have? 707 videos. Yeah, I mean 700 plus videos basically. That's the thing. 700 videos. That's insane. I gotta say, that's insane. Have you seen the special strike though? It's got quite a kind of nice animation. It was even the best animation. Special strike. Why only? I wish the special strike had all had approximately 200 or 300,000 views. That would be worth it. Watching the chill live stream. Come on, there's nobody. Seriously. I mean, come on. What? React to element of sanity. Let's check. Elements of insanity. What's that even? What's that even? What's that thing? What's that? Ah, no. It's no. Sorry, man. I'm not into that. No. I already growed up. Sorry. Hey, dude. Love your videos. Thank you. How are you? Skychrew. Hey, dude. Love yours. Thanks so much. How was your day? Pie bro, the gamer. How are you doing? Charmix is my recommended page. Why? Wow, I thought that there's gonna be more people. 30,000 people and only 5 on our live stream. Would you look at that? That's amazing. The reality of YouTubers, you know, 30,000 knows only 5 of them. That's amazing. That's like almost like 8,000. It's almost like 18. It's almost like 6.5 thousand people per one person. Wow, that's a lot. Vapor. I know why is it like this. Sunday. Okay, now I know. So how was your day? Sub boy, happy Easter lads. Your videos are, thank you. KW Gamer Cutie, hi. Humavid, hello, Humavid. I know you. You're one of the oldest persons on the channel, like the old users, the veteran ones. It's been quite a while. Humavid, I remember you from the very old videos, dude. You're still here. Thank you. It's been quite the time, you know. Cool music though. So yeah. Skychrew, by the way, react to Thanos versus Darkseid Toon rap battle. Noise McNoise pants. Let me check. Let me check what you typed. React to Thanos versus. Okay, let's check. Let's check that out. I honestly don't know what that thing is, but let's check. Oh, it's that thing. 8 minutes. Okay, let's go for it. Let's go. What's this? Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that thing is, though. Animation done by Verbalos. Check them out. Check him out. That's Batman. Yeah, I just have big life problems, so I can write. I hope you'll be okay, dude. I hope your problems will be solved, honestly. I mean, this is what people ask, right? Hide the volume. Okay. I don't really want to. It's okay. Black Panther versus Batman. Is this better?
Wakanda forever. Batman forever.
Batman forever.
Wakanda forever. Today's battle is going to be another scary one because both of these guys are scarier than my 6th grade teacher.
Oh my god!
Weighing an astonishing
Spooky time.
985 pounds and a height of 6 foot 7 inches. He's destroyed 700
Who that is, though?
planets, has a golden gauntlet which grants.
Oh, it's Thanos. Okay, I wonder why. No wonder.
To balance the universe, which I didn't know needed balance.
So it's gonna be Thanos versus Batman. Thanos gonna win. He's just gonna snap.
Thanos.
Oh, he's a big boy.
Scared.
Oh god, he's about to get screwed.
Don't worry. Today I focus on different prey.
Oh my god, he's about to smack him.
In that corner, weighing a ridiculous 1,815 pounds and a height of 8 foot 9 inches.
Who that is? Batman, the Batman.
Superhuman strength, can shoot omega beams out of his
Omega
eyes.
beams out of his
On a
eyes.
quest to conquer the entire universe.
Oh god.
Now I'm a little more nervous that he's here. He is the god of evil, Lord of Apocalypse. Today we have
What?
Darkseid.
Oh, it's Darkseid. Okay, whoa. I thought it's Batman. No wonder.
So you're the
Lol.
Thanos. And you're... I'm sorry, I never heard of you.
It's a spooky mon. It's a spooky mon.
That gauntlet.
React to quest for ink machine. Let me know after this
Guys,
video, okay?
You know, this is just supposed to be a beatbox battle, right? Well, you could look at it like it's another way to embarrass your opponent before you finish him off.
Agreed.
Great. Thanos.
Hello, Drew Master. Hello. Hello, Drew Master.
You might
How are
get
ya?
out of the ring, boy.
How you doing?
No problem, no problem. Okay, here we go. In 3,
Two.
2,
Oh, the battle starts.
go.
Oh, he goes. Oh, I'm gonna lower the sound. I might get copyright. I might get copyright, so I'll keep it a little bit quieter, okay? He's going crazy. Skychrew, will you? You will enjoy this when Thanos rap, okay? So by my request of don't hug me, I'm scared. Since here tonight we strike. Please wait, I'll react after this animation. Oh my god. Superman's dead! No! Oh god. It's a creepy time. Yep, he is. He has the power. Oh my god. Look at him go crazy. Need to go. Wish you good luck, Sky. Stay amazing. Thank you so much, Humavid. Much love to you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching and supporting the channel. Thank you so much. Thank you, Humavid. Thank you. Have a nice day, and I hope you solve your problems. Even he's dancing, the jury. Look at him go crazy. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, that's cool.
Performance by Thanos. Any comments?
I have some comments. It's very cool. Kawaii anime. Hello, Skychrew.
Wait.
Ah, okay, Fended Rainbow. See ya.
What we could do first, yes?
Fine. I'll let him embarrass himself before I destroy
Good luck for your channel. Thank you so much. Thanks.
So make sure you give him these when I'm finished.
Okay.
He was spooked.
Let's get started in 3, 2, 1, go.
What's he doing? Ah, I see. That's the beat. Okay. Oh wow. It's the egg. The egg came first. Oh god. Look at him go crazy. It's Deadpool, boy. Oh my god, he got squashed. I really missed this channel. Thank you. Thank you, anyway. Oh, man, Michael Jackson going backwards. Go crazy, bro. Oh, that was a roast. Thanos, what you gonna do? The dude's like scary, like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna hide. I don't know, they both kinda cool, but this dude went insane. I'm for this dude. He's spitting. Hey, hello Punstar, how are ya? Oh no, he lost! Oh, that's pretty cool.
That was pretty dark. Dark side?
Dark side.
But now it's time to get down to business.
Thank you, Brittany. Thanks.
Yes. After that pathetic performance, this might be the only way for you to redeem yourself.
Wait!
Oh, they're battling.
Fight in here?
Why not?
Because there's not enough room for you guys to display your full power?
He's right. Let's settle this on the moon.
On the moon? Wow.
Okay.
And the moon's destroyed.
Down below, which one of these characters you guys think won the battle? Thank you for
Okay, I see how it is. That was nice. That was cool. That was cool. That was actually pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty interesting. Okay. just type something. Okay. Well, is there any suggestions, lads? What do you think? Is there any reactions you think should react? Okay. Wait, have you watched Special Strike? I did. Look, it's on the channel. Look, it's like right there. It's like right there. The Special Strike. What? You didn't get notification? What? Wait a second. How did you miss that? It's on the channel. Wait, community tab. The Special Strike. It's there. I posted it on the community tab twice. You didn't get the notification? Oh god. That's strange. It's right there. Wow. People actually don't get the notification. I just realized that people actually don't get the notification. Wow. That's the thing about YouTube. They just do that. Yeah. My boy. Oh my boy. Dan is actually spooked. He's actually spooked. I don't know who's gonna win. Guess what I just did? What did you did, Clementine? TWD. What did you did, Clementine? How are you? Hello. I wonder your reaction to "Don't hug me, I'm scared." Let's check what you said. "Don't hug me, I'm scared." I threw an egg out of my house and recorded and posted it, lol. Well, why did you do that? Was there a reason behind it? Why? You have to cook the egg. Don't hug me like I'm scared. What is this? No, thank you. No, sorry, man. Sorry. I don't know. I don't react to these stuff. If it's a decent animation, then I will. But if it's not, then like, what's the point? Oh yeah, happy Easter as well. But you don't have to throw an egg. You have to cook it and eat it. React to Avengers Infinity War rap battle. I just reacted to something like that related. I give it back to the Easter Bunny, okay? Nice. Nice! I think this live stream won't be gonna long. It's just gonna be 1 hour, so probably like decent enough. It's like normal live stream. Just check the videos though. I'm just gonna explain that. So far, when I reacted not long ago, the very first year I did with the blue screen, and I didn't have the opportunity to divide it because it was such a bad lighting and a bad blue screen that I didn't have the possibility to divide myself from the screen. Right now I can do it right now even, but it would look like this. Look, is that better? I think that is better. I don't know. I mean, if it's really better, then I'll just leave it like that. I mean, I can just move myself right here, and that's all. Boom, I'm here. Yeah, why not? Let's just do this. Yeah, I know it's not a animation. Oh, okay. The chat is moving. Okay, the chat is moving. Ah, now I see it. Okay, cool. Yeah, there we go. That's way much better. Oh, that's so much better now. Finally, the green screen is gotten use. Quest ink machine. Let's check. Let's see. Quest ink machine. What's that? Quest ink machine. Oh no! That's shipping! No. That's a big no. Thank you. I'm a normie, sorry. Jesus Christ, what are you requesting me? Please, do some normal. Please, keep neutral status, okay? Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not into this. I'm a normie. I'm a normal person, not into these any kinks. So if it's gonna be something normal, I'll react to it. If it's gonna be something crazy, no, I'll pass. Thank you. Because I'm kind of spooked of these stuff. I want to keep it family friendly. Skychrew, boy, nothing is normal in shipping. I mean, no, I know, but like, I want to be normal. I want to be this live stream to be my live stream. 2-year anniversary. Come on. Animation memes. Don't tell me these cringy flip-a-clip animations, because that's terrible. Example of something like. Look at this. Look at this dude. Look at this dude. Vapor streaming. Oh my god. What is he even doing with his life? I don't know, man. If you have any questions or tips, like if you want to ask me something, I'll definitely answer you right now. Why not? I'll definitely give some tips. How to start the channel, what you have to do the first few months at least. Can you react to also Skychrew? Can you react to some animations? Have you react to Bon Bun's new animation? I gotta go. See ya, dude. See ya. Bye. Goodbye. Bon Bun Films. Let me check. Is it the last one? Tonight We Strike. Yeah, I did it. The Tonight We Strike, right? Ah, yeah, I did it. Tonight We Strike. Yeah, it's on my channel. Tonight We Strike. It's right there. Okay, but it's right there. See? There we go. That's the intro. Yeah, it's there. You see? Yeah, it's there. So I don't know. Don't hug me. I'm scared. SFM. This is so sad. It has no gore. What? That was strange. Don't hug me, SFM. I'm scared. Okay, let's check. Let's see if there's anything like that. Yeah, I did it. I did it. Yeah. If you mean that thing, Tonight We Strike. Yeah, I did it. I think. Yeah. It's on the channel. You can check if you want to. Okay. Have you ever, by the way, have you known that SMG4 is doing the 3 million collab entry? SMG4. Man, I love SMG4 channel. One of the best channels out there. Like, day and weekly animations. It's insane. Like, come on. 3 million. Yeah, there we go. Deadline 21st of April 2019. Today's the deadline. I wish I had the opportunity though. I tried to animate it, but I was completely like, what should I do? That's a lie. Oh, I meant this is so sad. That is lie. What's lie? Don't hug me, I'm sad. What? Wait, what? I meant TH. Don't hug me, I'm scared. That's a FM animation. It's this one, right? I did it. Yeah, it's on the channel. But I don't know. Ah, okay. Let's check this one. That's from animation. What's this? Oh, this one. Okay, what's this about? Let's see. Boring.
Until our show's on.
That's not enough time.
What is?
Always time for a song.
Who is that?
What's this shit? Oh my god! What did you make me watch? It's so bad. I don't know. Let's just forget it. Let's just skip it. God damn it. Yeah. Rocket Gaming. Oh, that's a good one. Rocket Gaming. Oh, good channel. Gotta say, it's a good channel. Let's check this out. Let's see. Oh wait, no, they copyrighted. I might live stream. Yeah. Rocket Gaming might copyright us, so I probably won't because there is a chance for me of having a strike for that thing during the live stream. It might be disabled, so the live stream can just cancel out, itself. So I don't know. Yeah, I know. I'll watch it. This is so sad by Bon Bon Films. Let's check it out. Which one? Yeah, I did reaction to this one as well. It's been so long. Yeah, I did it. I did that reaction already. So, anything else? Springtrap the Godzilla vs Kong Gamer 871. Hi! God damn. How are you doing? I wonder what video I made 1 year ago, particularly 1 year ago. Just exactly 1 year ago. Which one was it? Oh, Visage. I remember this gameplay. Spooky. Oh, I see. 1 year on YouTube, chill live streaming compilation. Just as right now, the same two videos. Yep. Same thing today. But hey, at least something. Good you. So, you know, it's fine. Not bad. I was thinking about playing a little bit of Subnautica. What do you think? Would you want me to play some Subnautica? I can play maybe Subnautica or Devil May Cry. Let me check what games I have though. Yeesh. Devil May Cry and Subnautica, yeah? That's basically two games I actually have. Whatever you want. Bonbon Films might delete it. Maybe he did. Maybe that's the reason. That might be the reason. Huge actually credit to Zalzer as well. Nice channel. I just might react today to another animation of the 17-minute video from the Golden Lane Studio. Yes, Golden Lane Studio. Such a long. That's the one 2 years ago. So this is where I started, lads. Like the thing is, the very beginning. Oh no, Bomb on Phyllis might delete. Yeah, he might. Jibber Dave, yes, how are you? Hello Jibber, how are you? So basically the very first thing how I started my YouTube channel is thinking about a Pokemon. I was playing this stupid game, Pokemon Revolution Online. It's an online game, right? And I decided to hey, why not play this game, right? And I uploaded this video. And then I continued until the 9th part. And I saw like, hey, I did Sans versus Battle. I did the reincarnation Bendy, and I was like, hey, dude, I did it. The reaction goes pretty well than the gaming. So the gaming got less views, and the gaming doesn't actually went pretty good. Nobody watched it, literally. Nobody watched it. Once I did the reaction, just a few small reactions. Boom! Comments! Boom! People are there, and I'm like, hey, that's a good thing. Why not? I just went for it. I just continued doing that, you know, up until today. I actually wanted to be a gaming channel, and I did the gameplays, a lot of gameplays at the start. 100 subs, such a good day. It took me like 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. It took me 20, 30 videos to get to 100 subs. It's very hard at the beginning, honestly. To get the first 100 is the most hardest part. To get to the first 1,000 is almost impossible. But after 1,000, getting to 10,000 is a little bit less harder once you get to 1,000, honestly. Getting to the first 100 and 1,000, it's insane hard, honestly. It's midnight in here. Oh, 6-hour difference. That's strange. Where are you from? Are you from Japan? I suppose. Japan or China? Or Asia. Somewhere in Asia, right? Or maybe Australia. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But it's not US. It's not definitely not USA or Canada. So when I started the channel, right? I did only Undertale. Just I don't know. I only did the Undertale reactions. I just kept on going with Undertale. Hey, wanna do the Undertale? And I just kept on going. And there's the Glitch Tale. I started the Glitch Tale series. I don't remember where. But it's somewhere at the beginning of the... Oh yeah, there we go. There it is. One of the first videos was Glitch Tale as well. I can't believe it's still going. It's still going from 2 years already. To Pi Notre, Mr. Zoings. You have currently got 2k and I'm gaining... Yeah, I've currently got 2k and I'm gaining subs. Yeah, that's the thing, you see? If you get to the first 100 subs, right? It's hard. It's very hard. It's like it takes you so much patience, so much love. You have to be determined about it. Once you get to the 100, you gotta keep, just as long as you're passionate about it, as long as you love doing what you do, keep on doing it and never give up, you right? That's just never give up. You skipped my comment. Well, you saw it, but you didn't Wait, what? Hi. Oh yeah, oh my god. Surfing is my thing, it's so cool. Surfing is my, hello, sorry. I was talking, sorry, I was talking, so yeah. Hi. My animation are recorded by screen recorder for iPhone, by the way. Come on. Why? Why? There's better programs. There's Bandicam. Come on, go get the... Oofland. There's this program, famous program called Bandicam. See? Bandicam is a screen capture. I used that at the beginning. You know what you can do? You can download the OBS, Open Broadcast too, just OBS. Open Broadcast Software is also a good program at the start. That's actually the best program right now. I've been using it for 2 years almost. But I'm on a phone. If you're on phone, then try to download DU. This one. Yeah, DU screen recorder, why not? It's also a good one. Yeah. If you're on phone, I don't know why, but Happy Easter, Wildlife. Bunny Love, hello. I just wanted you to see my second comment. That was the comment I was talking about. Oh yeah, about the Pi Notre. I'll write to it later, okay? I need to explain the situation with the channels. I have to you. Well, if it's without the logo, then it's fine. If it's with logo, please buy the program, at least with that. Start with that. React to I Kissed the Vamp. I had to react to the, first of all, to the Zoinks thingy. To it right now. I can't. No, I won't, because I want to explain the situation with the channel. Super Mario Matt. Hello. Welcome. How are you doing, Super Mario Matt? So basically this freaking thing. This thing. 170. Why? Why this? One of the very first videos, by the way. And I'm like, what did I do there? I don't know. The worst. And this, look at this. I did a live stream. Back then, I did a live stream, right? And like for the first 20 minutes, only I was talking to one person. It's so funny, man. What's up? Not bad, how about you? How about you? I'm doing fine. How are you? So the very first... I had 25 back then. This was the times when I had 25 and I was doing like at least 2.5 hour live stream of Pokemon and I didn't get anywhere. I mean, like, it was nothing, honestly, it was nothing, but at least I had fun, you know. As long as you're having fun doing it, so keep on doing it. Bunny Love, how was your day? React to It's a Teacher Vader. Well, I had to react to something else right now, probably. Let's just review it. If Undertale was flirting route, oh, such a good video though, but it's so cringy as bad. Violates the terms and service. Future goals, there we go, that's the video. My first live stream of Undertale. 697, oh my god. This was one of the good times I remember. The golden times I remember, honestly. It was one of the best times I had. Super Mario Map, please react to literally... No, I'm not gonna react to those things. I probably get copyright. If it's connected something with that thing, you know. 700. By the end of the day, boom, 772. Insane. Honestly, it's insane. 2,000. Ah, where did I get 1,000 though? Where's the milestone though? Ah, yeah, there we go. I honestly remember it like it was yesterday, vividly. Hello there, Stargamer. How are you? Welcome to the stream. How are you? I honestly remember this day as it was just yesterday. It was so naive though. I just wanted to keep on going, keep on going. Another day, let's go. Another day, let's go. Stream, 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 stream. I honestly don't know. Back then, it was so difficult to be somewhere. But to see the passion though, it was there. The first year when I was doing YouTube, there was passion. Yeah, the old days of Undertales. This is when I flew back though. This is when I had a flight. Look at this. Oh my god, this was such an amazing journey though. My god, look at this. I was flying to my home, from my home country to Poland right now, where I'm right now. And I was recording the flight, right? Mario is funny, yeah. React to Kiss the Vampire, please. I like them. And there I take off. I leave the country and I go back to my Poland country. What an adventure, honestly. What an adventure. Bye! Sky. The joke. That's a Sky. And this is a Shrew boy. The Shrew. Oh yeah, the food. Wait, where is it? Oh yeah, there it is. There it is. That's the picture. Oh my god. The man behind me like, nope, I'm gonna just pass. I see you're streaming videos next to the video. It's 2-year anniversary. I just do it once a year, every once a year. I did this. Oh, All Eyes on Me was a good song. My god. This is when I got to the 4,000 milestone, which was a big deal back then. Honestly, it took me this much videos to get to 4K. That's insane. A Glitch Tale, another episode. That's amazing time as well. Oh, this is the times when DA Games released his game. And this was the time when there was a charity live stream with Zalzar. Such a good times, honestly. And I think starting from this point, starting from which point? Wait. Bendy. I was just doing Bendy, and this is where I get to FNAF. Ah, yeah, this is where I got to FNAF. Somebody told me to react to this thing. To the TGOC plus FNAF rap by JT Music. So somebody asked me to react to that thing. And I said, whoa, what's that thing? That's cool. And a few weeks later, boom, Labyrinth by CG5. That's when I started to do FNAF. Lots of fun, FNAF. FNAF. There we go. There it goes. FNAF. Five Nights at Freddy's. There we go. And there it went. I changed the content from Undertale to Five Nights at Freddy's just like that, slowly. Boom. Back Undertale and boom. Instantly with Five Nights at Freddy's. I just went for it. You can see it definitely here, look. Undertale. A lot of Undertales, right? Only Undertales. And then boom, Bendy. I suddenly went to Bendy and Cuphead. So Bendy, Cuphead, Bendy mostly. And then boom. Hello Neighbor, a little bit of Hello Neighbor, a few days. But then FNAF. Boom, and there it goes. FNAF, Five Nights at Freddy's, Believer, Mr. Fear. Oh my god. 69C. You Can't Hide. Labyrinth. Traitor. The Traitor, this is where it begins. This is the first episode of the series. Arcade Game Music, hello. Mogolavonio, yep. Kadak31, hi. Check out FNAF. There's a new FNAF game coming apparently. Yeah, FNAF VR. This was the very first episode of the Traitor thing here. Remember the Mangle, the Traitor, Skychrew37. Yeah, Skychrew37. This is the very first episode that I reacted to the Traitor. No More Cake, I remember this one as well, yeah. Mr. Fear. Oh, Synthetic Agony, that was a big deal for me for the channel. And I was still relevant to Undertale a little bit, but I completely changed the fandom in 2018 to Luna the Crystal Cat. Hello, Skychrew. Skychrew. It's not Skychrew. Please, it's Skychrew. But hello, hi. And then I went instantly, just completely FNAF mode. And up until today, I'm still on that. And here we go. So after that came out song, the Like It or Not song from Dalco and CG5. And I feel literally a week ago, week later, 1 year anniversary. And up until today, literally a year ago. Year anniversary. You can see 11 months and 1 year. The difference between two videos, right? You can see it right there, right? 11 months and then 1 year. What a big that's a big time changing, honestly. Oh, Blind Rasa Okie Dokie, that was a huge deal. Honestly, that was insane. That was the video of the month. And then slowly, oh, the Muffin song. There it go. Scared of You was a big deal as well. Ah, this freaking video. So for me to upload this video, you know what I did? I actually went from my house to my university at 9 o'clock at night. I was connected to the Wi-Fi from my shitty laptop just to upload this video. I was so happy that I did it. I was like, oh my, I did it. I uploaded. Oh my god. Because I need to mark that daily upload. It's muffin time. Yep. And then the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was announced 10 months ago. Not even a year. And then there's the Hottest Dog thingy comes out. And then I just went full on the Hottest Dog channel. And then just simple reactions of Cuphead, Baldi, Bendy. A little bit Bendy. I was still really into Bendy though. And then Baldi slowly. There was a lot of Baldi. Yeah, that's the time when Baldi came out. Almost a year ago. It was super relevant, so I was keep on going. Baldi. Let's go. Let's go full on that. Troll Gaming, hello. How are you doing? What if you drop Pop Candy under swap? Well, it was very bad time in 2015, so probably I won't do it these days. You do a great... I mean, thank you so much. Oh, Life is Fun, Boy in a Band, and... Yeah, The Odd Ones Out, that was a cool one. Then came out Glitch Tale, new episode there, she announced Camila Cuevas. Oh yeah, that was the time when I was depressed, so I took a break from YouTube for at least like a month. Oh no, 2 weeks. Birthday live stream, that's the thing. Last time I celebrated my birthday last year doing a live stream, 21st of August. I celebrated my birthday last year doing a live stream, which was a big deal actually. Skychrew, you're my favorite. Thank you so much. I will continue doing my best as I can do. And then yeah, We Happy Few came out. We Happy Few song. And then I started playing the We Happy Few. That was amazing. I really loved We Happy Few. Really. I desperately wanted to continue, but nobody watched it. Barely somebody watched it. I even did the 4th episode of We Happy Few. I was so determined to do it. I was like, I need to do We Happy Few. People will love it. Please, let's do it. Come on. Oh, the technical collab was amazing as well, lads. What do you think about it? Can't tell your fans about us. I remember watching those. I'm good. Sky, thank you. I mean, there is a lot. And then the Stickman came out. Right now, Jay-Z Boy, who created the Stickman animations, he's doing the Bendy Chapter 5 animation. I can't wait for it. It's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be amazing, honestly. And then I started tracking the Mocky. The Bongo Cat meme. 7 months ago. The Bongo Cat was relevant. There was a lot of songs even. Oreo made a song and CG5 made a song of the Bongo Cat. The Shadow Gamer, hello. Speedrun battle of Undertale Genocide against me. I did it. I did a speedrun of that. I think I did. Check out my channel. It's somewhere there. And then Bowsette. Oh no, the Bowsette came out. Oh my god, it was such a terrible thing. There was 1 month of Bowsette. Such a terrible thing. Oh my god. But the Visage gameplay was a hard one. War of the Fat Italians was a big thing as well, back then. You can see it right here. War of the Fat Italians was the biggest video of SMG4 so far yet. That was a big deal. What? The moth meme. There was a lot of moth memes. The moth and the lamp. The Glitch Tale official trailer was released. Still some Bowsette memes. Still was relevant. And then Bendy, let's go. And the Spookymon. And then there was a Halloween time. I remember I was carving the pumpkin. I was literally carving a pumpkin. And look at the skeleton dance. Lamp. Saints. I remember I was carving a pumpkin last Halloween. A lot of you didn't watch it, but I did it. A lot of you don't know about this video. But I did that thing. I literally recorded myself carving a pumpkin. It was empty. Oh my god. Such a good times. Golden times, I gotta say. How it turned out though, I think I made up. Oh yeah, that's the thing, yeah. Woo! It's a spooky mon. And that's the end. Okay. Deltarune came out, of course. Let's remember the good old game. So 5 months ago, Deltarune was a thing. A lot of people was doing a lot of gameplays of it. I was like, oh my god, this is the best. I gotta keep on doing. Nobody watched it still. Not much. Oh yeah, this was the reaction when one time I got so spooked when I actually, please tell your about us boyfriend. About my girlfriend. She was on the live stream not long ago today. Hey, that's the hint. Hello everybody, Dark Rocks SFM. Hi, how are you doing today? So the next thing is SMG4, constantly SMG4 videos every week, almost every day. Because SMG4 made this arc. Bob Mansion, yeah. The Cuphead Zako 37 still, Metro Runner, it's a big thing that's gonna come out soon, very soon. And the lasagna from PewDiePie song was a big deal as well. Merry Christmas, that was the end of the year already. Oh yeah, this is where I did the year review. 2019 year review was a big thing. I know how you feel about Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Please check out a kissing. There she is, Brittany Flanders. If you asked about my GF, there she is on the live chat. Wish lasagna, yep. I did a reaction, but it was not the original. It was a memed video. And continue doing FNAF, but this time I kind of mixed everything. FNAF one day a meme video, one day something else, and one day Undertale. Everything was different. That's what I loved. And this is the 2019 goals. Let's hear it. Interesting year. I said not YouTube, the Skychrew channel, and I've been doing nothing but reactions, which I still. Oh yeah, this is. I said that. I'm not saying that we're currently at 26,000, right? And my plan is to double. So the plan for this year, the end plan for this year was 50,000. My purest dream. Oh no, I closed it. Okay, I have to open again. But it's my really a big dream to if we can do it, lads. I don't know. It's gonna be dreams come true. Honestly, I don't know what to say. It's gonna be amazing. I gotta say, man. Oh yeah, there we go. So we can go up. Okay, how are you doing? Yep, she is. Please tell world our relationship. Yeah, I mean, Brittany Flanders is my GF. I'm not hiding it. I mean, that's true. So let's move along. The Subnautica came out. Subnautica Below Zero 2 months ago. Oh no, wait a second. Motivation, let's go down. Wait, I went too much far. The CG5 and Oreo made a song together called Deltarune, Evil Team. Such a beautiful song. Another day, I reacted to the Senior Pell animation and the motivation for YouTubers. Actually, a good thing. If you're a small YouTuber, please, if you're a small YouTuber and you want to become a YouTuber and at least have some motivation, this video is for you. I'm not saying it just for views. No, This actually helps. This is what helped me. This is what drive me. Have you heard of a Google game, Ponytown? Yeah, I heard about it, but it's not my thingy. So the thing is, this is what is gonna help you. This is what's gonna help you, alright? If you feel like you want to be a YouTuber. Small motivation, but if you want to do it, watch it. The Glitch Tale came out. Oh, that was a big deal. That was a very big deal. Glitch Tale, oh my god. 42 minutes. It took me almost a night to do this. Such a huge deal as well. And then Subnautica series. Would you look at that? I was doing Subnautica non-stop almost every day. Boom. Subnautica Below Zero Part 1. Boom. Subnautica Below Zero Part 2. And I didn't care. I didn't care if there's nobody watching. I kept on doing. I kept on doing it. Like, hey, Subnautica, let's go for it. I mean, Subnautica. And I went for it fully. And then I stopped for a while until there was new updates. I almost did everything. I almost did everything to even up until today, which is insane. Oh yeah, and let's not forget about Skychrew. Remember this one? Remember this one, lads? Remember this one? Wait a second. The thing is, wait. Oh, you saw it, right? You saw it, right? That's the thing. This is where the Skychrew came out. If some of you don't know, there's a dark side of the Skychrew is Skychrew. Fun thingy, you know? I said, hey, why not do this thingy? 14th of February, the day of the loved ones, the couples. This is where I lost 42 bucks. Such a painful day. How long was your oldest SMG4 video reaction? Oldest? Oh, that's a good question. Let's check. So wait, I wonder as well. I didn't actually ask myself. We're gonna return so quickly, just want to check a few things. SMG4, wait. The oldest one, right? I think it's Undertale related, right? Oh, wait, I think it is, wait. Skychrew, SMG4, Undertale. Yeah, that's the thing, this was the oldest one. This is the oldest SMG4. This is the first one I ever reacted to his... Wait. No. This is the very first one, yep. Let me show you the date. I don't know, let me just do this. Wait. Yeah, you see? 12th of August 2017. The same year I started doing YouTube, so... April, May, June, July... 5 months after I've started YouTube, I reacted to one video of SMG4. But after that I stopped. I just stopped. Like, you see there's no SMG4. No SMG4. No. There's no SMG4s. And like for at least another 5 or 6 months, I didn't react to SMG4. I want to check when I started reacting to SMG4, like when it all started. When was the beginning of SMG4 reactions? Oh yeah, there we go. Oh my god. Okay, SMG4. Mario and the T-pose virus, yep. We should go down a little bit. Oh, where is it? Where's the beginning? I think it's even way much older. Splatoon, I think, yeah, there we go. Ultimate Mario Spaghetteria, that's where it started, yeah. This is where it started. 15th of July. 15th of July 2018. 2018. So I took a break from 2017 almost to a year. So I didn't react to a year to SMG4, but one of the oldest was the SMG4 if Mario was in Undertale. I just reacted because I was doing Undertale back then. And then once Ultimate Custom Night came out, so there was this animation that was super popular. SMG4, Freddy's Ultimate Spaghetteria. I reacted to that and then boom. It all started from that thing. I just made it to the T-pose virus thingy. So up until 9 months ago, and it went SMG4 every week. Boom, 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 boom. Why? Need to close my Discord. I need to close my Discord. Okay. Jesus Christ. So, Bendy. Let's return to where we was before. Subnautica, yeah. We went to Subnautica class. Let's check it out. SMG4 is old. Yeah, it is. So, Undertale back and then a mix. So, yeah. Michael, I reacted to if Mario was in Undertale, and then I took a 1-year break from SMG4 videos, and I started reacting in July 2018 again. Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I reacted to Mickey the Monkey Show. Gordon Ramsay Raw. It was actually pretty good. I knew it would be good. Good thing I did it. And then this is the recent ones. I lost $42. God damn, that's a lot. That was a lot of money. That was such a bad, terrible day. Devil May Cry 5 came out 1 month ago. Still relevant, god damn it. I really wished it was better. Like, you know why? Because I said, can we reach 25 likes on this video so I can post a second part? You know what happened? We didn't even get to 20. I just gave up on the gameplay. 150. What is that? That's nothing. And then I started drinking G Fuel. I stopped right now. I don't know why. SMG4. Something about Star Fox was a big hit for the channel as well. Good thing. FNAF VR Help Wanted. Not a bad thing. Anime of SpongeBob. SpongeBob Anime Opening 3 came out. Wow, that was something epic. I gotta tell ya. Congratulations song from PewDiePie. That's when he did the song. Junior 987789. Hello Junior, how are ya? Lona the Crystal. Hi Punstar. Play tabs. I'm almost ending the live stream, so yeah. 1 week ago, we almost ran up the time. There was a picture of Black Hole. I made a video about it. Special Strike announcement. The Battle Royale animation did reaction. Dark Revival. That was a big week. The previous week was such a big hit. Honestly. Was it even this week? Wait, was it this week? Let me check. Oh yeah, it was. It was this week even. My god, look at this. My god, is this amount of video for 1 week? That's a lot. So the first animation of Wolfie Chew. This is the first animation of Wolfie Chew. I did it. It was pretty cool actually. Like I'm gonna react to Wolfie Chew now. What do you think, lads? Should I keep reacting to Wolfie Chew's animation? Would you like to see Wolfie Chew's animation reactions when there's gonna be something new about it? Well, let me know, lads. I'm gonna read right now. Like Wolfie Chew, I don't know, it's kinda cool. Like, what do you think in general about this animations? Weirdest thing that scared me. What do you think about this animation? Should I keep reacting to these? What was your favorite video? Yeah, I love Wolfie Chew. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of cool. I enjoyed it myself so much. The voice was cute and like, it was funny, you know? The Shaggy though was pretty cool as well. The Special Strike, 20 hours ago, would you watch that? Literally, and then the Special Strike came out. Literally yesterday. I'm even with the same outfit right now. I'm even wearing the same thing. And this is when it came out. The Special Strike, 1 hour video, almost 1 hour, 56 minutes. Such a big hit as well. And then there's this compilation. I honestly enjoyed this compilation. I spent all my day yesterday and today as well. This is a huge deal for me, honestly. I spent so much time on this, you know? Just please watch it if you have the time. It's a 2-year compilation. So I would appreciate if you would watch that. And basically here we are today, lads. Here we are today. A channel with almost 30,000 amazing people. Amazing. Here we are today, lads. Skychrew channel is still alive. Still keep on doing my reactions. I'm still here to upload every day a new reaction video for you. If possible, a new gameplay. Yes, so close to 30k. So close. I really hope that we're gonna reach it today, before midnight. That'll be cool. But I personally think that we did it. Can you show your first videos? Sure. Easy. Thank you for even asking that. I would gladly show my first video. Why not? Yeah, sure. It just takes some time. So many videos, but the main thing when I started with Undertale, Bendy, and then it goes. This is my first video ever.
The music, like, you know, it's palette town. Oh,
My very first video. Oh my god.
it's legitimately cool, dude.
I'm crying. It's so good.
Like, I can really tell that the interface is pretty much cool. It's like
This is the very first video. The very first video on the channel. Oh my god. I'm kind of, I don't know why I'm doing this. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, oh, let's play a game. Let's play a game. How dare you do it?
How fucking dare?
Oh no, don't swear. Hey.
I don't like your
Back then it was you were allowed to swear, but now you can't. You will get demonetized.
Okay. Squirrel attacks you with tag.
This was my first video. It's so bad.
Why is the screen
Look.
not too big for like
21st of April 2017. Look at here.
It's cool.
You see it, right?
Another series of Pokemon, like, the screen is like full. Legitimately full.
Oh my god. So I'm gonna show you a Ponytown version if you guess.
What good is this Pokemon?
Adam Race. Hello Adam, how are you?
What is Tremor?
It all started from this video. A legend was born. Officially my first video. But yeah, then I kept going with this. I did a second video, third video, and then boom, Bendy and the Ink Machine came out. Literally 3 days after I started my YouTube channel, the Bendy came out. Will you do a big reaction video on 30k? It's gonna be tomorrow, dude. I mean, I did this. Oh, that video. I did this thing. You see it, right? 30k special. So, I mean, I did this already. Zuch Adrel Villamore. Hello, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. But I did this. So, I'm gonna hit, I mean, 30,000 is gonna be probably today or tomorrow. So, it's just a matter of time. Probably tomorrow even, at evening. So, yeah. Let's just say we got it. Check out Sweet Tunes. No, I'm gonna check Vampire. That's a vampire. But yeah, it's been a long ride, honestly. It's been a long ride. 707 videos. Just to think about. 707 videos. What do you think about 707 videos? Is that a lot for you? What do you think about it? That's a ton. That's tons of videos. 700 days. God. That's insane. That's insane. I remember I took a break 1 month from YouTube. So that's why it's not like... I didn't upload every day. 800 videos on 30k. Why? So you're saying that I need to upload at least 800 videos to get to 30k? I doubt that. Probably 2 or 1 video more and that's all. That's a skeleton. 2015 jokes. You came a long way. It's not me, lads. It's all we who came up. If it wasn't for you, lads, I wouldn't be here. It was all thanks to you, all to these amazing 30,000 people who made this channel, who is still supporting this channel and watching the live streams and watching the videos. It's all thanks to you. It's not me who did this. I'm just one guy, one person who sits in this chair recording video with a shitty camera. I need to change my camera very soon, so I'm just a simple person that keeps on going, you know? So I hope one day to reach to 100,000. That's my lifelong dream. That's my end goal dream, actually. I'm not aiming for 1 million. I'm aiming for 100,000 subscribers. And I think I'm gonna keep on going for the next 2 years as well. My maximum 2 years is my limit. If we're gonna get to at least 50,000 before this year ends, I mean, if we get to 20 more thousand at the end before the end of this year, my dream will come true. Honestly, I don't know. Then do gaming. No, that's the opposite of success. Gibber, I will do gameplays, but so rare, because you see, like, look at my channel. Look at my recent gameplays. Like, what was the recent game I played? Just so you know. Subnautica Below Zero, look. 257 views. Devil May Cry. Relevant game. It was a relevant game. It came out the same day. And I played it. 150 views, bro. The gaming is not for me. My thing is reactions, look. 1.5, 1.6, 1.2. 36,000. So it speaks for itself. I have to do reactions. What happens if you reach 100k no, I won't. Zuch Andre Vilmore. I will never get to 100,000 subscribers before the end of 2018. That won't happen. If that happens, that's gonna be bananas. I don't know if that's possible. I really doubt that, but at least 50k. Lower it, cut it to half, and that's probably my goal. Maximum goal. You wasn't that powerful? No, I wasn't. No. I'm still not. Michael, I'm still not. No, gaming wasn't. I mean, I don't know. If I was doing gaming, I wouldn't get even to 10k. I'm a boring commentator, okay? My commentary can only last like for at least 4 or 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Oh, Lagotario, thank you for subscribing. Welcome to Lads Team. It worked! Lagotario, welcome. Thank you. What do you think is going to happen in the next SMG4 video? The next SMG4 video, I think he's gonna do the... they're gonna save the anime, unban anime from the ESSS, so the dude, the Axel, he will draw something, and probably will show how entertaining anime is. I don't know, but they're gonna do, to save anime, they're gonna save anime. That's what they're gonna do. He's gonna explode. Who? No, I'm not, no. I'm not. I'm still small. See, it's small.
Oh my god!
Look at, for example, look at this channel. Chi Ai. Flint. Come on, where is she? There she is. Look at her. Look how long she was doing YouTube channel. I really appreciate, I love her channel. She's an amazing YouTuber. The best YouTuber that I know of the songs. She's been on YouTube for 8 years. She's been on YouTube for 8 years, right? See? So, I mean, if a singer, amazing, cool, amazing singer for 8 years, I'm not even close, so I appreciate Shisana, she's amazing, but like, if you're thinking that I'll get to 100,000 just for 2 years, no. Vapor, you know Vapor the gamer, this guy, he spent 5 years to get to 100,000, 5 years. 5 years. It took him 5 years. Daily uploads, just as me. Daily uploads. It will take me about 5 or 3 more years to get to 100,000 if I keep on doing this. Probably 4 or 3 years. So I know I'll get there. I won't stop until I get there. I won't stop. But one thing I doubt is that the platform, YouTube, might collapse. There might be something that YouTube won't hold. So there is a high possibility that the YouTube will collapse rather than me. I'll keep on doing things, but you think platform will allow us? What about Article 13? Have you thought about that? This is what's gonna kill me. Article 13. This is what's gonna kill my channel. This is what's gonna kill my channel. This is the end, lads. So we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of stuff. I mean, 60, 90, 96 more. This is what's gonna kill me. Article 13 is gonna kill me. Kill the channel. So this is the end. I'm just having fun. I'm just doing what I do. If this hits, if this actually will take place, it's the end for me. I'm done. Skychrew won't be anymore. All of my videos are gonna be like, poof, done. Just delete it from YouTube. It won't be there. It won't be there. Vapor the Gamer, me, Sister Reacts, Zalzer, Chi-Chi, CG5, The Living Tombstone. Maybe The Living Tombstone and CG5 will live, but a lot of people, they just won't be on YouTube after this. There won't be people. YouTube is gonna collapse if this hits place. It's did. Gaming is not. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We just have to wait and see. When will Article 13 take effect?
Good.
Oh my god. Such a cringy kid. What is he saying? Oh my god. When? I don't know when, but I just want to know when it's gonna be the end, that's all. But hey, still here, still doing the videos. I love you, Skychrew. Thank you. Let's enjoy every single moment. Exactly. Let's do the best out of it. Let's get the maximum out of what we have right now. Honestly, if my channel is gonna die, I'm gonna go to Twitch. You heard it right. You heard it right. If my channel is gonna die, and if Article 13 is gonna hit place, not me. If Article 13 is gonna take place, I'm just gonna be a live streamer on Twitch. That's where I'm gonna go. Of course, I'm gonna notify everyone. I should do it actually now before everything ends. So, I mean, if this ends, then I will go to Twitch and become a streamer. That's all. I don't have to edit. I'll just sit in the chair and just talk like this every day. Probably next good place, but I won't get anything. I'll just be earning money from the donations. That's all. It's not time yet. Who knows? Maybe it will turn around. I don't know. But yeah, what you gonna live stream? I don't know yet. I don't really know. I don't know. Probably Subnautica. Again, Undertale, Deltarune, all the games, Bendy, all of that stuff, regular stuff, you know, day-to-day basis, all the fandoms. Five Nights at Freddy's, all FNAF episodes. I've been here since 2015. Really? How can you be? I mean, how can you be here until 2015 if I started my channel in 2007? If I started doing videos on 2017? That's the question. I created my channel in 2015, but there was no videos. I wasn't doing videos for 2 years. I created the channel in 2015. Okay, you got that right. But there was no videos. There was zero. This is the first video. This is the very first video. I mean, Ebredi the bread. Hello, my boy. The boy's here. Animated, let's go. Ebredi, my God, huge shout out to Ebredi. I need to. Let's go. Check this dude out. My God, let me just tell you one thing. Hello everyone, my name is Skychrew. This dude is amazing. Oh my God, that's Ebredi, check him out. Amazing channel. Ebredi. He did this animation. Look at him. This was pretty cool. The cat. I always thought that he was like. I really love this animation. It was pretty cool. So this is a fan made that he Brady
usual to
made
see, like,
of
it's not
the
a real series, but you kind of
Special Strike thing.
like it's a series, you know. Spook.
I really love this animation, dude. It was turned out amazing. So check Brady out. You gotta check him out. He's an amazing channel. Right there. Subscribe to him. You gotta subscribe now. Subscribe to this dude. Thanks for the. Yeah, thanks. Check him out. Amazing channel. Honestly, he has a lot of animations. I mean, not this one. Update video. But it was pretty cool. I mean, he does the Bendy and Link Machine stuff, animations, recently. And some FNAF as well. After Hours. I'm gonna react when you... If you're gonna upload the After Hours, I'm gonna react to it, dude. He's almost 60,000 subs, though. Twice as much as I have. Check him out. Cool, my god. Gotta take some water. Oh, so much better. So, check out. Thanks. Thank you for subscribing to eBready. He needs it. Let's get him to 60,000. So his After Hours is going to be big. Oh, that's gonna be amazing. See after crab raid. I wonder which raid it is. It's a crab raid. Oh boy. Water. I got a cup of what? It's water. I mean, you won't regret. eBready has amazing. He's an amazing animator. Go big or go home. That's true. I mean, the first video was 2 years ago now. It's insane to think. And the fandoms that I'm still related to is to Undertale, Bendy and Link Machine, Five Nights at Freddy's, what else? There was a lot of fandoms. I mean, Doki Doki Literature Club, I guess, if there's anything new. Glitch Tale, that's a thing. Deltarune, that's a thing. It's just good to see the animations, you know? And that's basically it. I'm not into much fandoms, I told you. But some of them are there. Just FNAF, mainly it's FNAF, Bendy, Deltarune, and that's all. By the way, at the end of After Hours, I'm going to tease my next prize, so keep an eye out. Okay, looking forward for it. Ready? SMG4, exactly. Oh my god, SMG4 is also a fandom. One of the animators, SMG4, I also react to that thing. Weekly, by the way, and now my channel is occupied for a lifetime on Saturdays. Every Saturday of my life now, every Saturday of my life is now occupied by SMG4. And it's so funny. It's kind of crazy to think, like, I have reactions till the end of my life. SMG4, that's all, Saturdays. Even if I quit every fandom, I'll just keep on reacting to SMG4. That's gonna be sad. The first video was Pokemon Revolution Online Episode 1. No, Episode 1. Episode 1. Don't mistake that. It's a big mistake, boy. A lot of animations, a lot of... Dom23. Also good animator. Oh my god, so much. But right now, Stickman, Jay-Z Boy is doing animation of Stickman versus Bendy and the Ink Machine. Versus Bendy, like Stickman and the Bendy and Ink Machine. If Stickman was in Bendy and Ink Machine Chapter 5, yeah, that's the thing. The hottest dog, good animator. Special Strike, I can't believe it. It's done. The Special Strike is done. It's right there. It's already, it's done. Wow. Oh, Eppo. Informer is a good animator as well. Not bad. But eBready, god damn, amazing animations. Let me tell you that. Style is there. The style is there. The glamour, the passion is there. Chocotail, oh, that was a thing. The old times. Nobody knew me back then. I was like 0. Nobody. Not even a close one. I was doing Chocotail. Little bit. I don't know why. Undertale, oh yeah, that's the thing. Look at this, look at the length. Look at the length of this video. Look at this. 11 hours 55 minutes. Look at the. Oh my god. Look at this shit. Look at the name of the video. Oh my god, this is so bad. Mystery Tale, Undertale Genocide, back again. You know what I did? I went to sleep for 5 hours. I went to sleep for 5 hours. Wait, let me actually count how much though. Oh, it was way much more. Oh shit. Look at this shit. Look at this shit. 3 hours 32 minutes. 3 hours 32 minutes. So count that out. 3 hours 32 minutes up until. Ah, yeah, that's the thing. People ask me to do a roleplay, so it was back then when I had 3,000 subscribers. People ask me, Sky, let the stream and go sleep, then the fans will chat and also can play. Went to sleep, the stream is about roleplay. I'm in the game called Undertale, don't forget. People actually asked me to go to sleep and leave the live stream on just so people can roleplay. What? That's so stupid as the stupidest thing I've ever done, honestly. I left my PC, maybe laptop even back then, baby laptop. Just an hour, went to sleep, and I spent like at least 11 hours roleplay live stream. Oh my god. And if somebody asked, what is the longest video on the channel? This is the longest video on entire channel. There is 700 videos. This is the longest video ever. Just woke up, good morning! We'll be back in 1 hour and we will continue playing. Oh my god, no. Oh no, no. This is so bad. I was so determined back then. Honestly, seeing this makes me want to cry because it was so bad. But at the same time, I remember the struggle.
I just woke up, so I'll be back in 1 hour. I'll do all my stuff and we'll continue live streaming. So yeah. Well, that was my first live stream so far. Like that was a big live stream, literally like 11 hours of streaming, and I'm still gonna continue.
I'm still gonna continue. Wow. Okay. Good boy. Oh my god. Why? That's the stupidest video I've ever done on my channel. I was so determined. I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna keep on streaming. Why not? Let's go 40 hours. Let's go 50 hours. I woke up. I couldn't sleep because I was worried about if PC will burn or like laptop. I've been here for years. 2 years? Because it's been only 2 years. You always have to start somewhere right now, no matter how hard it is. Not only that, bro. You have to do anything to be right now. If you're not an animator like Ibredi, the hottest dog, you won't make it. Now, especially as a reactor. Reaction is now occupied, it's done. You have to be an insane reactor, like scream, probably go super crazy. Maybe to get somewhere. I don't know, good luck with that. Oh my god. Okay, and I'm gonna probably end the last. I don't know, I'm kind of tired already. What up, boy? Andy, how are you? So, lads, if you still have any questions, I'll gladly answer them. I'm gonna finish up the live stream because it's been like 1 hour and 30 minutes. I probably might react to this thing. Let me check. Let me show you actually. So, nothing else. Oh, that's a good channel. I want to react to. Where is it? Oh yeah, this thing. Oops, spoilers. I'm gonna react to this thing today, right now. Five Nights at Freddy's, the Twisted Once episode FNAF web series. New episode from FNAF, from the Secret Force studio. That's definitely what I'm gonna react right now. You see? This thing. Today. Yeah, probably today. Why not? I'm gonna do it today, lads. Just stay tuned for that. And yeah. You helped me through the rough times I've had. Hey, thank you. That's one of the purposes for the channel. I want to help the people. I want to entertain. Sky, if you'd like, you can react to the original After Hours to get the memes. Ah, bro. Bread boy, ready. I don't know. This is what I'm gonna react today, ready. It's 17 minutes. It's gonna take some time. If I'm gonna start right now after the stream, take some little break, 10 minutes. I'll probably upload at 10 o'clock or 9:30. So it's gonna take 2 or 3 hours. Okay, it was a joke. Bread boy, Bready the bread. I wonder why you named yourself Bready though. Is there a story behind it? It's fine, boy. So yeah, I'm gonna react to Five Nights at Freddy's The Twisted Ones episode 5. When did I react to the episode 3 though? It wasn't so long, right? When was the last time though? Yeah, it was kind of a long time. Or is it just me or what? When have they made it? Dog. What the? Secret for Studio. I remember it was not long ago, right? Yeah, that's the thing. 1 month ago. Oh, okay. Let's search somewhere there then. This was a good one. Hidden in the Sand. Not bad. I really love this Hidden in the Sand though, dude. The original Bready meme. Okay. Bready meme. Okay. I'm gonna wait until Skychrew hits 30k or not because I'll sleep. No, you had to sleep. Don't wait for it, please. Don't go for that. Don't go that crazy. I will hit it eventually in 2 days or 1 day. Hey, Yuri Andrade. Thank you so much for subscribing. Welcome to the lads team. Thank you for the sub. Recording gold one. That's a good one. Episode 3. Wait, did I skip it? Where is it? Let's look at it closely. Let's open our eyes. Searching. There it is. There it is, boy. This was the previous episode. 28th of February. Oh, it's been a while. It's almost 2 months. My god. Now I see it. I'll wait. Seriously? It's a long way, you know? It's like still 93, so I don't know. It'll take 2 days, you know, probably 2 days, so who knows? Hey, thanks, Andy. But yeah, lads, I think I'm gonna end the live stream here. I'm kind of tired already. I've been talking non-stop for 1.5 hours. Literally non-stop talking. This was 2-year anniversary. The channel is now 2 years. So proud, so happy about it. Up now, the next live stream, of course I'm gonna do live streams this year, but the anniversary one is gonna be only next year. In 21st of April 2020. 2020! Would you look at the year? It's gonna be epic year. It's gonna be revolutionary year, I suppose. But yeah, thank you so much, lads, for joining in. I'm gonna end it here probably. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna end it here. So yeah, lads, thank you so much for supporting this channel for the 2 years. It's been an amazing year. There's been a lot of ups and downs, of course, but mostly it's been stabilized and it's just a good year, right, in general. Let's not think about all the positive stuffs, but let's focus on the good stuffs. And yeah, what an amazing year it was. We doubled the amount of lads on this channel, amazing people on this channel. We doubled that size already to at least almost 30,000. Last year we had 14,000 something. Now we almost doubled that size, so I'm really glad. Like, my goal for this year is 50,000 for the end of this year. So I mean, if I keep on doing, if I keep on loving what I do, I hope we can do it together, lads. But in general, Thank you everybody so much for joining in. This was the 2-year anniversary. Thank you so much everyone, and I'll see you all today. Yeah, I'll see you all today with the reaction of episode 5 of FNAF series from Secret Force Studio. So, be cool. Let's stay awesome. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye. Thank you everybody who joined. And also, join the Discord server. The link's in the description. Join the Discord server. Remember about the Discord server. I'm sometimes there. See ya, my dude. Bye, everybody. Join the Discord. Goodbye. Thanks for the 2 years. Much love. Bye.